Welcome to Marketing with Confidence. I'm your host, Marianne Amies. We're going to be talking all things digital and online marketing for business owners and marketing professionals. If you've been feeling overwhelmed by your digital marketing, be sure to listen along and you'll hear tips, interviews and more that will give you the confidence to create marketing you love. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing with Confidence. I'm so excited today to be joined by Alex Mills. Hi, Alex.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Look, to kick off, can you tell everybody a bit about yourself and how you came to carve out your space as a social media strategist and influencer expert?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am a little bit about me. I'm from a small town called Ipswich in the southeast of England, as you might be able to tell by the accent. But I live in the inner west of Sydney, having escaped the clutches of the English expat stereotype that is the eastern suburbs.
You moved out of Coogee.
Yeah. I always called it the Holy Trinity. You're English and you're either in recruitment or marketing, and you're in Bondi or Coogee. And so I've been here for the last 7 years. Moved out on, with not as a backpacker, but I did move out here with nothing more than a laptop, a few contacts, and a suitcase, with the idea of building something for myself in Australia and challenge myself in a new market. Having, I suppose, got a little bit over the London rat race and wanting to try something a bit different. But in terms of becoming a social media strategist and an influencer person, that was something I fell into, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It's not really something that you study. It's not like there is influencer at university.
No, not in our time. I mean, I think I'm older than you, but not in our time anyway. Perhaps in the next decade there'll be, diploma of influencer marketing, but not in our time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So it was really, I graduated uni as a music fan who wanted to either be a rock star, write for Kerrang magazine, or present a radio show or something like that. So what happened was I actually started out working as a content manager for music download and streaming services.
Nice.
So very different to this sort of thing. At the time, social media was not much more than MySpace, Facebook, and don't even think Twitter had launched yet. So, but it was content marketing. It was the content. Either you were a journalist or you were a content manager or editorial manager for some sort of content offering, whether that's music, whether that's whatever it is. And that was kind of the start of my career. And I spent a few years doing that in various iterations for different services, for different types of products across mobile, across web, across games console even.
Wow.
And as I kind of continued to progress in that way, music being my first love, but I realized that as a profession, there was potentially a bit of a glass ceiling, and I got more interested in wider digital and content marketing. So that's when I got eventually went into more of a traditional digital marketing role, having done a digital marketing postgraduate diploma. And from there, I was torn between this kind of wanting to expand my career and get more experience, but missing the creativity and the passion that I got from music. So I moved to Australia, and that's when I went agency side, of agencies that specialized in social media. And by this point, I had some basic social experience in terms of producing video content, optimized for platforms. Influencer marketing was still quite new at that stage. And so I was just learning on the job, really. Coming in and taking on certain clients. When I first moved here, I was very focused on Optus. And so that was a mixture of managing their always on social media for both the main brand and then for Optus Sport, covering all of the football, which is my other big passion. And naturally through there, we started to get more opportunities to work with influencers, either or to supplement hero campaign activity with, let's say, partnerships with Usain Bolt and Ian Thorpe. And it's like, well, let's pick out some influencers that can supplement some of this activity. and reach those different audiences they have. For example, there'd be some campaigns where we'd be working with parenting bloggers and that sort of thing, or more sports fans for Optus Sport. And then moving to my next role, where I ended up looking after Adobe for many years. I think that's where I really started to hone in on influencer marketing as kind of my niche, because a lot of what Adobe did was working with content creators, either photographers or illustrators or graphic designers with a clothing label, whatever it is, to unpack how they use the software. And so I ran a program with them for many years. And it's just been applying that learning, really.
Yeah.
There isn't a course on how to do influencer marketing, but I do have a bit of a checklist for myself that I, use and I give to my clients.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I think, and I think, living through that evolution, like you've built your knowledge and your skill set as that whole sector has evolved. It's been such an organic evolution, and we've seen it go through so many different iterations of what it looks like, and the opportunity to grow alongside of that is quite fortuitous.
Exactly. If you go back, say 10 years ago, Viners. It was Vine essentially. And it's funny, there's a couple of content creators that I, follow as a fan who do a podcast now, and they have a YouTube, they have a YouTube presence, but they started off as Viners. But, there is that natural evolution. And 10 years ago, it was people on Vine, and then YouTubers were starting to come up. And we've seen the evolution become quite focused on the Instagram niche. Then there's TikTok, then there's been Twitch as well, and that's very much more, there's, what I love is there are so many different kind of niches or sub communities within the open space, which has been the thing I've found most exciting about the evolution of influencer marketing in that regard, and just the influencer space in general. We've seen a real dramatic shift in the types of personalities that are becoming influencers.
Yeah, so true as well. Yeah, it was sort of a really sort of, I don't know, I want to say elitist curated, range of faces that gravitated towards, I should be an influencer, or I could turn this into influencing, where I think now there's a broader representation, and there's a lot of niche influencers, and, more interesting and diverse people that can be worked with as well.
That's exactly it. And you'll find a lot of people that have become, and it's a strange one because we're saying influencers, but I think a lot of influencers would say, just call me a content creator.
Yeah, 100%. There's been a shift in that as well. Yeah, you're so right. And I think in some ways, it's almost like them owning the active of it, whereas before it was, I do this and it should influence. Now it's like, well, I create content. I have a tangible role. It's that realization of how to add value and how to communicate your value on.
Exactly. And I think a hell of a lot of them these days are, they started creating content for their own amusement and their own entertainment, and it grew.
Yeah.
And this is now my career.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, look, I'm going to ask you a few more questions about you and your behind the scenes. So I know through our relationship that you've taken your, I guess, corporate career and moved into the freelancing and business owner space, which, is always fascinating. And a lot of people that listen to this podcast are business owners and are CEOs of their businesses. So I'd love to know that shift for you, how you've learned to balance working on your business and working in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still learning.
Same.
If your audience has any tips, then I'd hate it, because and that's the thing. So what I do with my business and my freelancing is I will work with some agencies part-time basis, and then I will work with my own, on my own business with my own clients who are generally smaller companies that can't afford an agency, don't necessarily need an agency. They just need a consultant like myself to come in and help them. So I think I'm still fairly new in my journey, but I think the main thing I've I've learned in terms of working on work versus working in is splitting that time up so that I can't, if I'm going to go and meet someone for a speculative coffee, let's say it's to meet a videographer because I'm looking to expand where I get more high-end video content creation opportunities. I film a lot of reels myself, but if you need something that's a little bit more high-end for YouTube, I'd want to work with someone behind
the for sure.
Like that, or meeting other small business owners, whatever it is. I can't do that, like do meeting days and travel into the city and meet someone for coffee and then come home and be like, right, I'm going to work. Like by this point, I'm in social mode. I can't get down and focus. Whereas when I'm working on the business, whether that's, accounting, whether that's producing my marketing materials, I need to just be focused on that. So I think it really is about scheduling those days and trying to break it down and not make it too overwhelming in the sense that it took me a long time to get over the fear of zero and of all the finance accounting stuff. And I figured out a few systems and processes to break some of that up and make it feel a little bit less overwhelming, rather than, I don't necessarily do a day of finance, but I schedule kind of a couple of hours of finance before moving on to something like filming reels for my Instagram.
Something that lights you up, something that's a little bit more inspiring.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. And then what about morning habits? We hear so much about, how people start their day really sets them up for success. Do you have any morning habits that you attribute to, getting up and out?
No, nothing completely revolutionary. I mean, I do gratitude journaling.
Amazing.
I should do it every day. I try and do it most mornings. And I know that when I stopped doing it for a little while, I actually noticed a real kind of shift. Whereas every morning, got my little journal and I'll write down the things that I'm happy and grateful for and appreciative about, whilst I'm checking the overnight news that's happened in, back in see how my English football team did and that sort of stuff, with a coffee. But, nothing crazy. But I think when it comes to general work, I do not, how should I rephrase this? I do not subscribe to the concept of eating the frog. Other people might do, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of setting myself up for success, I really like to get a few little quick wins out of the door and done quickly. Some people love to be like, right, I'm going to take on the biggest, most overwhelming thing of the day. That's not me. What I like to do is get online earlier than most people. Rather than get into the office or be on my desk at 9, I like to get a few little things done early whilst I'm still getting ready, just so I've got a little bit of momentum carrying me through the day.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm an eat the frog sort of person. I need to warm up. For that big thing.
That's absolutely right. It's warming up. It's building momentum. And that could be something as simple as like having drafted up a couple of emails before the day before and just being like, all right, get them done. And it's like, cool, I've done a couple of things. It just means that maybe there's just something in the psychological component of ticking things off the to-do list. And you can all right, cool. It's not even 9:30 and I've already achieved these things. Now it's time to pick up that frog and dig in.
You're speaking my language, because people know I love to tick things off lists. That's one of my pleasures. And even setting up the list with easy wins so that there's some great things to tick off straight off the bat is very much, very much motivates me on a Monday. I'm like, easy wins. I can tick that off, in the first half hour. So no, I can really, really relate to that. Well, that's awesome. I think it gives us a good insight into you and, your emerging business and how you're tackling that. So let's get into influencer marketing. So why do you think business owners need to pay attention to influencer marketing right now?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons, and I came up with a concept that I call the 4 C's. As I started to get more and more down this route, because those 4 C's are like, number one is content at scale. Because let's say you work with an influencer and they will film a video and create a few photos. side. You've essentially got them to do, let's say, 2 posts, just for the sake of argument, 2 posts that come from their profile. And if you've got the usage rights, you can use them on your profile as well. So that's essentially like 4 pieces of content, or not, 4 things that's happening in the social media world that gives you that extra element, as opposed to just you going and creating something yourself, and then you've just got that there. So yeah, there is that content scalability, because it leads into the next one of cost efficiency. There is a bit of a misconception where companies will say we don't really have the budget to work with influencers, but I think that's actually one of the more cost efficient ways to do it. You can work with a really talented creator that can produce good video content. That's probably going to be cheaper than hiring a video company.
Absolutely.
And then from there, what you can do is, let's say you want to work with creators that can shoot some videos to promote your business. You can then focus that video production budget on something else that you can do internally. So let's say you do have a graphic design team. You can be like, well, now we can focus our internal resources on doing more blog content, doing stuff that the influencers can't necessarily do, like banners or whatever it is. So it kind of matches up, because then if you work with a few micro influencers, then there is both that content at scale and that cost efficiency, because you've got more content out there at a cheaper budget than hiring a video production team. I am in the video production space, so it's something that I do love, so I'm not going to discredit that. I just thinking pragmatically, certain scenarios, I'm like, it's probably better to just do a influencer campaign with a few names. Then you've got that extra longevity as well, because you could launch with influencer A on the 1st of May, influencer B on the 15th of May, and it just drags on a bit longer. So
absolutely.
So that's the first 2, and then the third is it's community or connection. So not only because your business, you have your audience, you need to reach new audience. It's quite natural that work with influencer with engaged audience sitting over there, you are connecting with that audience. But also, let's say you're a gelato company or you're a smoothie company, right? What's your target audience? Kind of everyone, because who doesn't want that stuff? Whether you are a high school student, whether you are a Gen Z, whether you are a retired couple wanting to enjoy gelato on your morning walk, like there are so many different opportunities. But then your messaging might need to be a little bit different. So the beauty of working with influencers is you can pick influencers that have a very specific demographic, and they can tailor the message of what you want to communicate. Because you might have a product that can appeal to everyone, but it can appeal to people for different reasons. And so you would have to create lots of different creative to get the message to the right people. Whereas you can work with influencers when you're like, well, we need to be hitting parents in Northern Beaches, creator with a relatable audience there. So that's that, and then it just gives you that extra credibility. There are some stats that explain that people are less receptive to traditional advertising, whereas word of mouth recommendations, word of mouth recommendations from people that they know and trust is much more, is going to stand much valuable for
advocacy.
Advocacy, and the thing is, yes, people will still know that it's a paid ad, because you have to disclose that the influencer does have to disclose it, but they're not going to partner with a brand that they don't like. So
correct.
And then the final one is creativity, because they know the trends. They are content creators. They know what's going to work well with their audience. They know what's popping on the platforms and that sort of thing. So it means that you can work with them on a fun, creative idea or creative to promote your brand without necessarily having to work with a creative director to go down that route. If you're time poor and you want to do some fun challenge with someone to promote your brand, they're going to be able to do that. So I think there are so many reasons. And it's funny because when I did start out in social media and advertising, sometimes I always felt like it was almost cheating a little bit by working with like, no, I want to be working with the strategist and the creative director, and we'll come up with an amazing campaign idea. it's been a real shift from in my thinking because whilst it's obviously always wonderful to do that sort of thing, sometimes, a lot of the times when I work with companies and they want to do an influencer campaign, it's because they just want a short burst of activity.
Yeah.
They've got leftover budget this financial quarter, or they're launching a new product and they just want to do something quickly. And this is going to be the most effective way to do it.
Yeah. Amazing. I think I love your 4C model. I love that you've developed a foundational model as well. And I think, you're covering off a lot of really good key points. And I think the accessibility, it's almost like, you're right. It's like hacking the system. It's like hacking the advocacy system. Instead of going out there, paying more to do the hard yards, you're shortcutting by finding the person that already has the community, has the skills, has all these great things in place, has the 4Cs in place, and can essentially push your brand forward so much quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And that's there are a number of self-service tools and platforms as well that can make it quite a lot more time efficient, in terms of, because that can be, it can be quite a lengthy process in terms of researching, finding out who people are. But there are increasingly more and more self-service platforms, which I always recommend for small businesses. Yeah, because you can put a brief out to the platform and just put it into the system, and then interested creators apply. So already the negotiation and the back and forth is no longer part. It's no longer in. It's just, okay, who's interested? I like the look of them. I don't like the look of them. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Amazing. Well, that sounds like a really good tip. What other tips do you have?
Yeah. What other tips? I think the main tips, the most fundamental, important thing that I'd recommend to any business owner before they start is to get really clear on what their objective is first. Obviously, everyone's probably sat there thinking, well, I just want to sell more products or drive more customers or whatever. But just think, well, what are the steps we need to take to get to that point first? Yeah. Is it awareness? Is it education and changing people's perceptions of your product or your brand? Is it driving trial of a product? Is it driving conversions? Think hard about that first and foremost, because the types of influencers and the types of briefs that you need to give them is going to change. Because let's say you are just about driving mass awareness. Then you can start thinking, well, let's just try and pick people with the largest reach possible, but give them a fairly simple task or brief to promote us. So hopefully then they might not necessarily charge as much because they're not having to put as much work in. So we can work with more people, supplement a bit of that with paid media behind that. But if it's, say, something like changing perception or education, then you're going to need to work with creators that are more storytellers, that can really talk about the way your product works, and also that maybe the size of their following isn't as important. How engaged their audience is, so that you can get them to create the kind of content that is going to educate or change perception. And if you really want that extra awareness, but again, just agree with them that you can put some boosting media spend behind it, and that way you can do more of the reach. So just think hard about that before you start reaching out to them. And then, some other micro tips in that regard is be aware of the rules and regulations in your industry. You have to always make sure that they clearly disclose that it is an ad. You can get really severely punished if you mislead in any way. There are certain rules and regulations when it comes to therapeutic goods, alcohol, caffeine, which will be fair standard stuff that you should probably already be across if you're a business owner in that space. I suppose, they are people. A lot of them might come from a marketing background, they might not. So just don't necessarily use company jargon. The right amount of background and context about your company, but make them as excited about your brand as you are. And so I always think, when it comes to briefing, background and context of the company, a little bit about the campaign that you're wanting to do, what their role comes in, mandatory do's and don'ts. But then, pick up the phone and talk to them, try and establish a bit more of a personal relationship with them as well. If you can build more of that personal relationship, you might work with them again in the future. And what I've done with some brands is, when I know that they're reliable and they get along well with the brand, they'll eventually, nail the brief in a much faster time period.
Yeah.
They might reduce their rates. I wouldn't say don't work with the same person over and over again because you'll saturate one another.
Yeah.
But as you start to get more, comfortable and confident in the influencer space, you might start to find that you've got a little pool or a little family.
Yeah, favorites.
Yeah, you might work with them once a year, twice a year, and you build up this little family. So, yeah, those would be my main tips.
Fantastic. And then I guess, an area of concern or, criticism is that accountability or that return on investment. Often I think business owners, again, I think this talks to the journey of influencer to content creator as well. Back in the past, there was a lot of, well, I sent my products out to all these people and, she took my product and then she only did this or she didn't do anything. And, I also think that's around the parameters that people set up going into those relationships. But, what impacts can we measure? What should we be looking for to deem that activity successful and worthy of, as you said, having a longer relationship or, having met our objectives?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And I suppose that's, is an interesting point you mentioned about, I sent this out to them and didn't really from them. And it's just a bit like, well, yeah, no, like you're not really like, talk to them, explain what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Outline what you'd like them to do that's beyond just an unboxing, which just who's not.
I know. What impact is that possibly going to have on anybody's life?
It's much better if they work with you to think, well, what my audience really enjoys it when I do X. And that could be a get ready with me tutorial. That could just be like a fun, like sketch. So let's try and find a natural way to weave in our product with that. I think Swag on the Beat are a fantastic example of content creators that they're a comedy trio, but whenever they work with brands, they find a perfect way to make the brand part of that sketch without it feeling like an obvious ad.
Yeah.
I'm digressing a little bit, but I think it goes in terms of measuring the impact. It's thinking what is the objective first, and there isn't anything wrong with having impact being awareness in terms of reach of your brand and in terms of how many views the video's got. But I would say the best way to drive a little bit more return on investment is think hard about what it is that you're asking them to do and try and find ways to draw that back to something like getting people to your website or getting people to sign up to an offer, because that way you could work with the creators, give them a brief, encourage them to drive people to your website. Maybe you could build like a campaign landing page with them. There's something to send people to, so there isn't just this one-off thing and that's it. But I also think, let's say you're small on your journey and you are just wanting to increase your amount of activity online. There's something to be said for before you were just doing a few Instagram posts here and there, or you were looking to create a TikTok page, but you haven't really had the bandwidth or capacity. By working with influencers, you are increasing your output in the market. That's something for you. And if you can use those influencers to help drive more followers towards you, then that's also another element of impact in there. So I think there's a number of different ways, but it comes back to fundamentally having that objective first, beyond just sending stuff out to them and hoping to get a shout out.
Absolutely. And I think it's the terms of engagement. It's your business also being really clear about what you want from the beginning as well. And then how you continue, how you build that relationship also helps how you can then measure it.
Exactly. And I'll just, for tangible examples, we'll go back to Adobe, when whenever we work with creators, there'd always be this component of we're wanting to drive product usage or product trial. So what we want you to do is create an amazing piece of art, but show how that was made.
Amazing.
Well, and that can involve something as simple as a time lapse that shows the artwork going from blank canvas to appearing, or it could be, I'm going to create a video tutorial showing the steps, and then driving to Adobe.com, people would sign up and partake in a free trial.
Yeah.
Or it could be for Spotify. We're working with influencers to promote a certain list of playlists of Spotify curated playlists. So we'd work with the influencers and be like, well, what seems more natural to you? And so one would be like, I like the pop hits, I like the rock hits, or whatever. And they'd create a sketch that's, using that music to a theme. So one was doing like grungy festival outfits,
yeah,
the rock playlist, and the other was more pop, as a parenting influencer doing pop playlists with them, driving to those playlists. And
I love that.
Yeah, awareness and advocacy for that brand of playlists.
But in a really authentic way. And I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like it has to feel authentic. It can't feel like this is, yes, we know it's paid promotion, but it can't feel like this person's reading off a script of deliverables. And, it's when you see, there's a few accounts that kind of post, influencer fails. And it's like when they've posted the caption that says, oh, hey, Dal, just make sure you say this in the post.
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, it comes back to, I suppose that's where getting clear on the objectives and taking them on a journey, getting them excited, because what you'll find is, let's say, if you don't brief them well and brief them properly, and you're underwhelmed with what you come back with, but you've entered agreement, so hopefully they'll be able to do the right revisions and amends. But you'll always find that it slightly gets watered down and watered down and watered down. So let's say you brief creator, they shoot something and it comes back and you're like, we don't like the fact that you're wearing a big Nike.
Yeah.
It's like, stipulate that up front, because just naturally, the more back and forth and reshoots and stuff, it's not to be critical. It's just naturally kind of.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you lose your love for it. And then it's kind of like, oh, here's my fourth take. They're not approving anything. And that energy, that passion, that fun is not going to be in the final take, is it? Because your internal monologue, your internal dialogue has changed from when you first kicked it off.
Exactly. And let's say for whatever reason you're in a category where there does need to be quite specific messaging. So going back to, say, pharmaceuticals, where there are quite strict things on what you can and can't say.
Absolutely.
To communicate that up front, work with them to create a script that feels right to them, but you're comfortable with, so that can be done in the first take. Because if they would have filmed something, you say, no, we're going to need to change it to this. It's just going to gradually get less and less effective and be watered down more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex. There's such great practical tips and insights, and I think really focused on small business. And I really appreciate that, ideas that small business owners can take and run with and start to kind of brainstorm and consider that role of influencer or content creator to really support their businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. I imagine, when I speak to some small business owners, they think that, I can't afford to get a Kardashian. And it's like, no.
You don't
need to do that. I would actually advise against that.
Please don't.
But, there are so many ways that you can do something on a more realistic budget for a small business, with creators in your local area that just gives you such a great suite of content that you can continue to use as well. So
amazing. I will pop in the show notes how people can connect with you on Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok. Because I think, you give away a lot of amazing tips and inspiration as well on all your channels. So thank you so much again for joining me today.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode. If you don't want to miss one, make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcast app. And if you love it, be sure to share it with friends and colleagues who you think could benefit from increasing their digital marketing confidence. Want more? Head to marianneamies.com to find out how you can work with me directly, to reach out to have me speak at your event, or to grab yourself some free resources.